I've always thought of werewolves as the ultimate predators. But what happens when they become the prey? Chapter 33. Past your bedtime then. I saw Jace and Adam exchange a wary look between them. We can't talk about it here, Adam said to me in a low voice. My eyebrows furrowed and I almost said something in response to his vagueness. However, Mrs. Chandler entered the room and Adam shook his head, warning me not to say anything else about it. Her face lit up when she saw me and she walked over to give me a big hug. Look at you. Holding up my left hand to inspect my engagement ring. You're getting married. I tried to smile sincerely as she seemed genuinely happy about the news, but I couldn't forget about Mr. Chandler no matter how hard I tried. Happy late birthday as well. To my 𝐊𝐲𝐷𝐞𝐬𝐈𝐷𝐸 𝐊𝐢𝐳 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. How was Germany? Adam cleared his throat awkwardly. I gathered from this ambiguous gesture that it probably wasn't a good idea to tell her about narrowly avoiding my throat being slit. It was great. I lied, giving her a fake smile. She didn't seem to catch on and simply smiled and turned to Adam. You did good. Referencing the ring. Thank you, he said smiling. Adam was a lot better at faking it than I was. I'm glad you're back safely, she said sighing. Mrs. Chandler turned and walked over to Mr. Chandler's bedside and sat down next to him, taking his hand in hers. Almost immediately after she had done so, the door opened once again and 𝐊𝐢𝐳 walked in, accompanied by a nurse in black scrubs. 𝐊𝐢𝐳 acknowledged Adam, Jace and myself with a nod and a smile before turning to Mrs. Chandler. Is he still sleeping? She nodded, running her hand soothingly along Mr. Chandler's arm. That's good, he said as he was handed a clipboard by the nurse. We're going to give him some antibiotics to make sure the wound doesn't infect further. 𝐊𝐢𝐳 assured her. I'm also going to give him something for the pain. It will keep him asleep, but he'll be resting, which is good. She nodded and turned her attention to the nurse who was injecting a vial of something into Mr. Chandler's eye. They will leave you to it, Adam said to drive. 𝐊𝐢𝐳. I want a copy of your report on my desk into ours drive. 𝐊𝐢𝐳 nodded and turned to aid the nurse who was checking Mr. Chandler's vitals. I took one last look at Mr. Chandler and the wound on his leg before Adam had grabbed my hand and pulled me out of the room. I want to know how long that bite's been on his leg, how it got there, and who put it there, Adam said to Jace as we left the hospital ward. What is going on? I'll tell you later, he assured me. Not here. I was so impatient. I felt so out of the loop and I was concerned for Mr. Chandler. I could see Adam and Jace were concerned about something, which made me even more worried. Adam led me to his bedroom as the butlers finished bringing in our luggage. I couldn't imagine what lugging my 60-pound suitcase up all those stairs was like, but I hoped Adam was paying those poor men well enough to compensate for the back issues they were certain to have after doing so. As they left the room, Adam closed the door behind them. Can you tell me now? I asked him. Get some sleep. You're probably jet-lagged. I groaned. Despite how incredibly exhausted I was, I knew I wouldn't be able to fall asleep. Not after finding out about Mr. Chandler. What is going on? Why won't you tell me what happened to him? He's my best friend's father. I'm allowed to be concerned. To my 𝐊𝐢𝐳 𝐊𝐢𝐳 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I could tell Adam was conflicted. Please. To my 𝐊𝐢𝐳 𝐊𝐢𝐳 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Sighing, Adam sat down on the couch, exhaling deeply, and I sat down next to him. There's things that we don't tell people. Things that if people knew about, they'd be scared of their own shadow. I cocked an eyebrow at this. What are you talking about? He looked at me warily before sighing again. How much do you know about vampires? Well, they're extinct now and, according to some people, they sparkled in the sunlight. I said, laughing nervously. My smile fell as Adam stared at me darkly. "Oh my God," I whispered. Adam's jaw clenched as he turned to stare at the wall in front of him. "You think a vampire bit Mr. Chandler?" I took his silence as a yes. "But that's impossible," I said quickly. "I mean, they're extinct. They have been for hundreds of years." "No," Adam said, shaking his head. "They haven't been." I looked at him in gaping horror. "How long have you known? How long have they been back?" "They never went extinct. We wiped them out centuries ago. But apparently not enough kill them all." "But why don't we hear of any attacks?" I asked him. "I mean, they're surviving off of someone's blood and we don't hear about it. They don't bite through the skin anymore. They cut people or stab them and they drink their blood as it comes out." I cringed at the thought. It's how they've adapted. It's also why they're so hard to find. They don't leave a trace anymore, he explained. The mistake that this one made was actually biting into Mr. Chandler's flesh once the wound had been opened. That's how Jason I knew. I gulped. "But if a vampire got to Mr. Chandler, that means they're either close to where you were living, or they've managed to get into this castle." I could feel my heart beating wildly in my chest. "What are you going to do?" I asked him. "Nothing for now. We need to make sure it was truly a vampire bite before we make any more implications. Remember that they found Mr. Chandler in the woods. It could have very well been an animal. With 2 fangs?" I asked him. "I'm almost certain of it. But I need to make sure. If they're attacking lycanthropes now, this could mean they're getting bolder, which will cause more problems in the future." I gulped and looked down to see my hands shaking. "Once we find out how long the bite has been on his leg, we can determine whether we need to up the security measures around here. Until then, I want you to be careful. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐸𝐾𝐜𝐬. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." I nodded. Adam put his hand on my shoulder and sighed. "Look at me." I looked up at him and I saw his eyes full of concern. "Don't worry. I'll take care of it. I promise you're safe here." I studied his face for a moment before shaking my head. "It isn't me that I'm worried about. Since we arrived back from Germany during the middle of the week, Adam wasn't fortunate enough to get a day to recuperate and had to immediately jump back into his alpha duties. I, on the other hand, slept for hours after he left to go down to his office, despite the eerie feeling that had settled in my stomach since Adam had informed me about the continuing existence of vampires. It was also unusual. One would think that being a werewolf myself, the existence of another human being wouldn't have struck me so odd. But it did. It made it hard to close my eyes when I thought about possibility of one of them being in the castle. But that was the only explanation. How could they have missed the bite for 2 whole weeks? Mr. Chandler had to have been bitten since arriving at the castle. After waking up from dreams filled with visions of fangs and blood, I noticed the sun had set and realized I had slept well into the night. I rolled over and looked at the clock. 9:47 p.m. I groaned and sat up. It was dark in the room, immediately making me uneasy. I turned on the lights and became further unsettled when I realized Adam had not yet returned to the room. My stomach growled and I decided to leave the room to go and get something to eat. I ventured down the stairs into the dark, shadowy castle hallways and anxiously listened to hear even the slightest sound of someone else that may have been awake as well. I went into the kitchen and, after turning the lights on, grabbed a bowl of assorted fruit to eat. Pouring a glass of water, I sat down at the counter to enjoy my late night snack, sticking my fork into a slice of pineapple. I took a bite of it. Suddenly, burly arms wrapped around my waist and I let out an ear-piercing scream. My mouth was immediately covered and I fought to pull myself away from the strong grip. I turned around after escaping, ready to stab whoever was standing behind me with a fork that was still impaled into a chunk of pineapple. I groaned as I realized it was only Adam. I threw the fork at him and he laughed, swatting it away. "You can't tell me that there are possibly blood-sucking creatures roaming around this castle and then sneak up on me like that. And you shouldn't be walking around the castle late at night by yourself knowing there's a possibility of blood sucking creatures roaming about. He countered. Touch. I huffed and reached across the counter to grab my half-eaten fruit bowl, picking a blueberry out and eating it. Why are you still in your office so late anyway? I asked him. Adam walked around me to grab a bottle of water from the fridge. Just catching up on some work. He explained. I'm afraid I do have some bad news. However, I tried to read his expression to determine just how bad the news was, but failed. What is it? I asked warily. Please don't tell me someone else was bitten or that Mr. Chandler is going to die. I have to go away for a few days. My eyes widened. That was almost just as bad. What? Why? I asked. He took a gulp of the water and reached out to grab a strawberry from the bowl in my hands. Jace and I are going back to Utah. He thinks he's found a good lead on your father. Take me with you. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐸𝐷𝐸 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐸𝐷𝐸 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐸𝐷𝐸. Almost immediately, Adam shook his head. It's not safe. My jaw dropped in disbelief. It's safer than staying here in this fang-face, infested castle. You don't know that there are vampires here. You don't know that there aren't. I countered. Nonetheless, Adam said, sighing. It's safer for you here. There are people that can help if something goes wrong, and there are people that can prevent things from going wrong in the first place. But I would be going with you, I argued. Aren't you capable of keeping me safe? More than capable, he assured me. But I can't watch out for you well enough where we're going. I need to be able to focus and find your father. You think he has something to do with it? 𝐿𝐢𝐳𝐸𝐷𝐸 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐸𝐷𝐸 𝐿𝐢𝐳𝐸𝐷𝐸. Adam nodded slowly. It's all an odd tangle of coincidences. I have too many things on my plate, and if I can find him, it's one less thing I need to worry about. Let me go with you. I know him better than you and Jace. I can help. No, Adam said firmly. It's much too dangerous and I can't risk it. I rolled my eyes and slammed the bowl of fruit on the table. Pissed off. I'm not a child. I reminded him. I can take care of myself. We can have this conversation again when you've gotten used to shifting, and you are comfortable with your wolf. Right now that part of you isn't strong enough. Adam's tone was one of finality, and I knew I wasn't going to change his mind. He also made a good point that my wolf wasn't very strong. If something did go wrong, I was better off staying in my human form than I was shifting. I would only be hurting myself if I tried to continue to act tough. When are you leaving? Hoping for time to be able to train. The day after tomorrow. I groaned. That isn't enough time. Stay here, he said again. Start planning the wedding. Go try on dresses. Make sure the Chandlers are okay. You've got plenty to do while I'm gone. I knew I had a lot to do. But, looking back on it, I was much more anxious about being away from Adam than I was mad about staying in the castle. When he did end up leaving a day later, I nearly cried at the thought of sleeping alone for a few days. I didn't want him to go. Don't leave me here. Alone, I pleaded as he finished packing the SUV with his bags. You'll be all right, he assured me, walking over to kiss me on the forehead. I gave him a tight hug before he and Jace got into the car. I love you, Adam said, winking. I love you, too, I sighed, watching him shut the car door. They drove away and I went back inside the castle where it was warm. I was met in the foyer by Victoria. Can I help you? My mood fell after saying goodbye to Adam. I thought you might want to go for a dress fitting. My eyebrows furrowed. A wedding dress fitting, she clarified. I nodded. I had known what she meant when she said it the first time. I was only confused as to why she was asking. I happened to know a woman in town who was a brilliant seamstress that would absolutely love to make your wedding dress. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐸𝐷𝐸 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐸𝐷𝐸. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, 𝐿𝐢𝐳𝐸𝐲. I said slowly. Lovely, Victoria said. I took the liberty of calling her earlier. So she's already inside waiting on you. My eyes widened. It didn't feel right, but I followed her inside nonetheless. After all this time, why would she be helping me now? I thought as I followed Victoria up the stairs. She took me into a room that I had never been in before. It was a rather large room with floor, 2, ceiling windows lining one wall and a large crystal chandelier hanging from the ceiling. In one corner was a divider that you could change behind, and in the other was a small, raised platform that was surrounded on 3 sides by tall mirrors. An older woman was standing in front of a rack of dresses and bowed when we entered the room. "Your Majesty," she greeted me. "You can call me Evelyn. 𝐿𝐻𝐷𝐞𝐝 𝐊𝐢𝐧𝐼𝐻𝐷𝐞𝐬𝐭. Extending my arm to shake her hand. She shook my hand. "My name is Laura. The Countess told me that you wanted some options for your wedding dress, so I've brought a few with me today." I looked over to Victoria, who was smiling to herself smugly. I rolled my eyes. She just wanted to make sure I didn't get a dress she thought would be ugly. Laura showed me the rack of dresses she brought. All of them were beautiful beyond belief, but none of them struck me as the dress. What if I wanted to design it? I asked her. Laura nodded eagerly. "We could do that. What do you have in mind?" I explained to her what I wanted, and she nodded, sketching it out on a small notepad she had. "Like this?" I nodded excitedly. It was exactly what I wanted. She turned and looked at the dresses behind us and pulled one down. This one had the corset I wanted, but the bottom was too straight for my liking. "Try this on, and I'll get some tulle and fabric to pin onto it so we can determine how thick you would like the skirt to be." I took the dress from her and went behind the divider to change. I put on the dress and walked out where Laura instructed me to stand on the platform in front of the mirrors. I did so, and she began to pin the layers of tulle around my waist. She stood back and tapped her chin in thought. "I have some material I think you would like down in the trunk I brought, but it's in my car," Laura said. "Hold on for one moment while I go get it." I almost offered to have someone go and get it for her, but she was out of the door quickly. "I'm going to go and get some tea." "Darling," Victoria said, sighing, "would you like anything?" "No, thank you." 𝐿𝐻𝐷𝐞𝐝 𝐻𝐷𝐞𝐬𝐭. I was still wary of her sudden mood change towards me. She shrugged as if to say, "Suit yourself," and left the room. I turned back to the mirror and began to fluff the makeshift skirt around my waist. I ran my hands down the beaded corset, imagining what the dress would look like when it was finished. A pin fell out of the skirt and I leaned down to pick it up. When I stood up, I nearly jumped out of my skin when I saw Diedrick standing behind me in the mirror's reflection. I turned around quickly. "What are you doing here?" Chapter 30 for Fittings. Flirting and fury. Diedrick smiled. "I'm glad you're happy to see me." "I'm not. I thought you would be gone for a few days," I said, gulping. He waved his hand dismissively as he strolled closer to where I stood. "My father and brother have been laid at rest, so I came back. There was no time to waste mourning." I took a shallow breath. "I'm sure Adam would have wanted you to tell him." "He and Jace have just left for Utah." Diedrick nodded. "Yes, so I heard." His eyes narrowed in on my hands. "You're bleeding," he commented, walking over to where I stood. I looked down to see that I had indeed been stuck by the pin in my hand. Probably in fright after Diedrick scared me, I huffed and held my hand away from my body to ensure I didn't get any blood on the white dress. Diedrick carefully took my hand in his and led me off of the platform. He instructed me to sit down on the high back chair, and I did so. Warily, he kneeled in front of me and took a handkerchief out of his pocket. Diedrick began to dab at the small drops of blood with the handkerchief. All the while I tried not to roll my eyes at the dramatic exaggeration. It was only a little blood. "Keep some pressure on it." Putting my other hand over the wound, I nodded and held my palm tightly. I saw Diedrick eye the ring on my left hand as I did so. "Lovely diamond," he commented, leaning in to inspect it closer. I felt my heart begin to race. "Thank you." My shallow breathing was an indication as to how it made me feel to have him so close to me. It felt wrong. I kept waiting for Adam to appear at the door. But he never did. Diedrick came close to saying something but was interrupted by someone clearing their throat at the doorway. I looked up to 𝐊𝐢 and sighed in relief. Am I interrupting? Glancing between Diedrick and myself, my eyes widened as I shook my head fervently. She must have seen the panicked look in my eyes, because she stepped into the room and eyed Diedrick warily. I need to speak with her. If you don't mind, she said to him. He stood up and brushed off his knee, nodding curtly at her as he left the room. What was that all about? She asked as soon as he was gone. I groaned. He won't leave me alone. When did he get back? I didn't think he was going to be back in the castle for a few more days. Just now. I don't think Adam knew he was coming back today either. Otherwise I have a feeling he wouldn't have left. Do you think he fancies you? Adam seems to think so, and I'm inclined to believe him. I answered. Lee spotted the diamond ring on my finger and gasped. Oh my God. Jace told me Adam was going to propose, but I wondered what the ring would look like. This is so much better than anything I imagined. I huffed. Who else did he tell? It seems like everyone knew but me. 𝐴𝐻𝐼𝐸𝐻𝐿 𝐿 𝐻𝐿 You laughed. That's how it's supposed to be. She looked around the room and then back at me. You're trying on wedding dresses, I see. Gesturing to the makeshift skirt. I nodded and stood up. As I did so, Laura returned to the room with the trunk in her hands. She was gasping for air as she placed the trunk on the ground. I apologize. Wiping sweat from her forehead with her arm. I haven't walked up that many stairs in my entire life. It's no problem. 𝐴𝐻𝐼𝐸𝐻𝐿 𝐻𝐿 It took me forever to get used to it myself. I'm still not used to it. You laughed. Laura leaned down and pulled out a few bolts of fabric. On one spool was satin on the other, tulle and one lace. All of them were pure white. 𝐴𝐻𝐼𝐸𝐻𝐿 𝐻𝐿 Come over here so we can start measuring. I walked over to stand in front of the mirrors as Laura began to pull off samples of the assortments of fabric to see which looked better. We stayed in the room for a few hours as we put the finishing touches on the design and picked out fabrics and textures for the dress. You never left my side, for which I was grateful. I didn't want Diedrick to take her leaving as an opportunity to come back inside the room. As soon as we finished, I changed back into my clothes and Laura told me that she would keep me updated on the dress progress and would call me if she needed anything else. I should have it done by the end of the month, she assured me. My eyes widened. That's a little soon. 𝐴𝐻𝐼𝐸𝐻𝐿 𝐻𝐿 Are you sure you don't need more time? She waved her hand dismissively. I've dropped all my clients for the next few weeks to focus on this dress. It's an honor to serve my alpha and lunar superior. For what you're charging, you can afford to drop your clients for the month. You muttered so only I could hear her. I laughed nervously and reached out to shake Laura's hand, hoping she had not heard Liu's snarky comment. I'll have someone come and fetch this trunk for you, I assured her. Thank you for coming today. I'm looking forward to seeing the dress when it's completed. Laura smiled and nodded. It is my pleasure. Your Highness. She left the room and I asked the guard that was standing in the hallway to help her carry her things down the stairs. Victoria re-entered the room once Laura had left. Beta Schneider would like to speak with you, she informed me. I rolled my eyes. What does Diedrick want now? And why is she even talking with him? Did he say what it was about? I asked her. Victoria shook her head in response. I huffed. Where is he? In Adam's office, Victoria replied. My eyebrows furrowed. Why on earth is he in there? She shrugged as she took a sip from her tea. I groaned and left the room. Is you hot on my heels? Do you want me to come with you? I shook my head. I'm sure you've got other things to do. 𝐴𝐻𝐼𝐸𝐻𝐿 𝐻𝐿
𝐻𝐿
I can handle him. You gave me a wary look before going her own direction down the hallway. I began to make my way to Adam's office, furious that Diedrick was in there while Adam was gone. Who exactly does he think he is? As I entered the office, I noticed two things. 1. The guards were not at their post, and 2. The lights had been dimmed down inside his study. I gulped, beginning to feel anxious about my decision to come alone. I walked down the hallway and peered into Adam's study cautiously. Diedrick was sitting on Adam's desk, flipping through a file. "You're not supposed to be in here," I said firmly, stepping out where he could see me. He looked up from the folder and smiled as he saw me enter the room. "Oh, Evelyn." Closing the folder and placing it on the desk. "Thank you for me here." I began to feel my blood pressure rise. "What do you want?" My patience growing thin. "I was originally going to invite you to join me for dinner." I raised an eyebrow. "And now?" Diedrick smirked and got off the desk where he had been sitting. "Well, now I'm starting to think we could just take dinner in my room." He had walked close enough to me that I had been able to reach out and slap him. The sound of my hand hitting his cheek echoed through the room. "Are you aware that I am mated to your alpha?" I asked incredulously. "Is that what's stopping you?" Unfazed by the slap, Diedrick started to walk closer to me and I began to back away in response. "You felt the connection the night we danced." "There is no connection between us," I assured him. My heart skipped a beat as my back hit the wall, unable to go any further away from him. Diedrick saw this opportunity as an advantage and placed both of his hands on either side of my face, leaning in close. His menacingly tall frame got closer to me and my breathing became shallow as he leaned in. "I could make you feel things you thought were unimaginable." Coming close to whisper in my ear, "Adam does not compare to me." I cringed and raised my knee to his manhood. Diedrick groaned and I took the opportunity to flee. Although I never heard him leave the office and follow me, I ran fast up the stairs and down the hallway to Adam's room. "𝐿𝐷𝐷 does not come on this hall under any circumstances," I said to the guard standing in the hallway. I saw conflict flash across his face. "Is there a problem?" "I'm afraid he's sleeping in the guest room next door," he said gruffly. I gulped. "Well, he's not allowed in this room," I said firmly, closing the door behind me. I took a deep breath and slid down the back of the door. My heart was still racing and I could see my hands shaking as I held them up in front of me. I took a deep breath and exhaled. Noticing the phone in the corner of the room, I stood up and made my way over to it. I held the receiver a good distance away from my ear as I anticipated the shrill voice of the operator. "Can I connect you to someone?" Her voice piercing through the phone. "Adam, please," I said politely. "One moment." I tapped my foot against the ground anxiously as I waited for the call to connect. It rang for a few seconds before Jace answered. "Hello. 𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐷 𝐿𝐷 𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐷. It's Evelyn. Can I talk to Adam? Give me a second. I heard a muffled exchange of voices before I heard Adam's voice. "Hello, love." I sighed and felt my relief flood my body at the sound of his deep, accented voice. "Hi, Adam. 𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐷 𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐷. I've got news. Me too. 𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐷. Laughing nervously. "You first." "No, you." "Fine," Adam said. "Which would you like to hear first? The good or the bad?" "Good. The good news is, we've only been here for a few hours and have already gotten reports of several cases where vampires are believed to have attacked. So that means Mr. Chandler was likely bitten before he was found, which means there aren't inside the castle. Well, that's a relief. 𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐷 𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐷. What's the bad news? The bad news is, Jace has already lost his lid on your father. I could hear the disappointment in his voice. "I'm sorry. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐬 𝐂𝐥𝐳𝐸𝐬𝐭. My dad is a smart guy. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐬 Heartfelt thanks 𝐊𝐢𝐃𝐝. He graduated with honors and at the top of his class from law school. He won't be easy to find if he can help it. The line was silent for a few moments before Adam sighed. What was your news? It was quiet for a moment as I bit my lip, trying to find a way to tell him. Evelyn. I gulped. Diedrick's back. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐬 Heartfelt thanks 𝐊𝐢𝐃𝐝. Christ, he exclaimed. What the bloody hell is he doing back so early? He said he didn't want to waste time mourning when he could be here. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐬 Heartfelt thanks 𝐊𝐢𝐃𝐝. Sitting down on the bed. No, he didn't want to be away from you for a long time. He said, growling. That's the other thing. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐬 Heartfelt thanks 𝐊𝐢𝐃𝐝. Feeling my stomach drop. What? His voice was deep and slow, as if he was already thinking of all the things I was about to tell him. He kind of hit on me. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐬 Heartfelt thanks 𝐊𝐢𝐃𝐝. Kind of. He tried to get me to go up to his room, which happens to be right next to yours. I explained. The line went silent for a few moments. It was as if I could feel his rage seeping through the receiver. 𝐿𝐷𝼐𝐻𝐿𝐬 Heartfelt thanks 𝐊𝐢𝐃𝐝. I'm on my way home and I want you to stay in that room and keep the bloody door locked until I get there. Do you understand? Wait. What? Standing up. I'll be there in a few hours. I could hear him giving out commands to Jace and the others who were with him, telling them to pack up. We just got here. I heard Jace say, don't do anything rash. 𝐿𝐷𝼐𝐻𝐿𝐬 Heartfelt thanks 𝐊𝐢𝐃𝐝. I just thought you should know. I don't care. I'm on my way home and that bastard better pray I calm down before I get there. I heard someone knock at the door and my eyebrows furrowed. Who could it be? Victoria. Diedrick. Adam continued his threats and ranting as I walked over to the door and opened it. I interrupted him. 𝐿𝐷𝼐𝐻𝐿𝐬 Heartfelt thanks 𝐊𝐢𝐃𝐝. He stopped, yes. I stared at the vase of red tulips that sat on the ground and the guard who was lying dead in front of them, blood spilling out of his mouth. I began to feel lightheaded as tears of horror filled my eyes. Please hurry. Chapter 35 Rough. Unknown key. Ovi, this wasn't part of the deal. He snarled. The woman's eyebrow rose as she looked on at the two men arguing. My demands have changed, the second man said, crossing his arms. If I get what I want, I will give you access to the castle. If you can't make that work, you can find someone else. The first man growled. Do you realize what this means we have to do? What we'll have to risk to get you what you want? Of course I do. The woman stood to her feet as she saw patience running thin between the two men. We'll do it, but we want inside the castle sooner than next month. Or no deal, she bargained. A smirk rose on the face of the second man. Done. Evelyn's P.O.V. I don't want to look at them. I sat on the bed, pulling my knees in tight against my chest. Lee took the vase of flowers and put them in the bathroom, closing the door as she left them on top of the vanity. I could see outside the open bedroom door as 5 bloody men picked up the lifeless body of the guard. They began to clean the blood from the floor and the smell of bleach burned the inside of my nostrils. It was the second time in my entire life that I had seen a dead body, and it happened to be the second time in 1 week as well. Although one of the men had affirmed that the guard was dead and had been for a few minutes before I opened the door. He told me that only Drive, the US AK, would be able to confirm exactly how he had died. Until then, I was left wondering if it had been a vampire's bite, although I didn't see any wounds on his body. The only source of blood had been from his mouth. 𝐊𝐲𝐻 rubbed a hand on my back, assuring 𝐿𝐲 as she sat beside me on the bed. 𝐿𝐲 went over to the door and closed it so I could no longer see the clean up. It was late, almost midnight to be exact. After Adam was able to calm me down and call someone, several people arrived up at the room to see what had happened. They had taken pictures, tried to pull fingerprints off the flower vase, even going as far as to interview people who had been on the hall that evening. No one had seen anything, but someone was able to confirm that Diedrick had been eating by himself in the dining room when the guard was killed. Knowing this made my stomach churn. I couldn't imagine who would have killed the guard, but Diedrick would have been at the top of my list of suspects if I thought about it hard enough. The thought of some unknown person killing another mere feet away from where I stood made me sick. "I feel terrible," I said to them both. "I'm so sorry for waking you two up, but I just couldn't stay by myself." 𝐿𝐲 shrugged. 𝐿𝐲𝐻𝐸 𝐿𝐲 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐃𝐻𝐸. "Don't worry about it." 𝐊𝐲 nodded her head in agreement. "We wouldn't want you to be by yourself anyways." "Thank you," I said, sighing. It was quiet for a few moments as I thought of a way to change the subject. I knew Adam would want to talk about it when he returned, and I wasn't sure how much more I could take. So, I said to 𝐊𝐲, "How is 𝐊𝐲𝐻𝐸?" realizing I was trying to distract myself. She smiled and nodded. "He's good. I spoke to him this morning." "So are you two officially dating?" 𝐿𝐲 asked curiously. 𝐊𝐲 shrugged shyly. 𝐿𝐲𝐻𝐸 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He asked me to come visit him in Lagos, but I told him I didn't want to leave while Dad was still sick. Hopefully you'll be able to go soon. 𝐊𝐲 turned her attention to 𝐿𝐲. "How are things with you and Jace?" I gulped nervously at the awkward turn of the conversation. I wasn't sure that 𝐊𝐲 knew Jace and 𝐿𝐲 were mates, and I didn't want to be standing there when she accidentally let it slip that she had slept with him. 𝐿𝐲 was sweet, but I didn't want to know what would happen when she finally snapped. I feared for 𝐊𝐲's life if she was ever on the receiving end of 𝐿𝐲's hidden wrath. A jealous mate was nothing to be trifled with. "Jace and I fine." 𝐊𝐲 wiggled her eyebrows. "I saw you leaving his bedroom last weekend." My eyes widened as 𝐿𝐲 blushed. I was suddenly reminded of the last night of the centennial when Jace had invited her to stay the night. "How many times have you done it?" 𝐊𝐲 asked her, mischief dancing in her eyes. 𝐿𝐲's blush deepened. "It's been over 3 years since we found out. So quite a few times," 𝐿𝐲 said bashfully. I saw 𝐊𝐲's eyebrows knit together. "Found out what?" "Oh no. Jace and I are mates." I saw the look of confusion, shock, and guilt flash across 𝐊𝐲's face all at once, and I gulped. "Oh," she said. "We're not really a couple though," 𝐿𝐲 admitted. "He and I have been trying to work things out for a while." "Sounds complicated," 𝐊𝐲 said slowly. 𝐿𝐲 nodded. "We'll get it together eventually." The look of utter shock was still on 𝐊𝐲's face as the room went awkwardly silent. Just as I was about to end the awkward conversation, a knock sounded at the door and I froze. "Do you want me to get it?" 𝐿𝐲 asked. "Evelyn, darling, it's Malcolm." I sighed in relief, hearing his voice. I got off the bed and walked over to the door, opening it to see him standing in his pajamas. "I heard all the commotion and I wanted to ask if you were okay." I nodded, crossing my arms. "Best be careful," he said, lowering his voice. "The dead roam these halls late at night." I felt my heart begin to palpitate. "Have a lovely rest of your evening." Breaking his dark demeanor with a bright smile, I was more confused than comforted as I watched Malcolm walk back down the hallway and into his bedroom. I turned around after closing the door and looked at 𝐿𝐲 and 𝐊𝐲. "Did you hear that?" I asked incredulously. They both nodded, 𝐿𝐲 rolling her eyes as she did so. "He's just a crazy old man. Don't let him fill your head with fairy tales." I gulped, wanting desperately to tell her that they weren't fairy tales anymore. I was starving, but too scared to leave the room. I also couldn't bear the thought of making someone else walk on the hallway to bring me food that late at night. The last thing I needed was one more person's blood on my hands. So, I went to bed with an empty stomach. When I woke up the next morning, 𝐊𝐤𝐳 was curled up asleep beside me on the bed. I rolled over and looked at the clock. 647. I had only slept for 5 hours. I sat up, sighing, and saw you sitting on the couch drinking a cup of steaming coffee whilst reading a book. How long have you been awake? I asked her softly, trying not to wake up 𝐊𝐤𝐳. I never went to sleep, she said honestly. I got out of the bed and walked over to her as she spoke. You need to get some rest. 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸 𝐷𝐼𝐸𝐻𝐿 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐿 rubbing the sleep from my eyes. I'm fine. Are you sure? I nodded. Jace's room is right next door. I'm sure he wouldn't mind if you slept in there for a few hours, I suggested. You smiled. I know where his bedroom is, she said smugly. I laughed at the suggestive comment. She stood up, finishing her coffee. You know where to find me if you need anything. I'm a big girl, I assured her. You smiled and left the room. I turned around to see 𝐊𝐿𝐤𝐳 sitting up in the bed, probably having been awake for a few minutes. Why didn't you tell me they were mates? She asked me. You rejected her. It wasn't my place to tell. I slept with him for Christ's sake. Getting off the bed. I wouldn't tell you that. I mumbled. She groaned. I can't believe he didn't tell me. I looked at her incredulously. I'm not sure he had the time in between kissing you and taking your shirt off to do so. She glared at me, but I didn't care. 𝐊𝐤𝐳 shouldn't have been so reckless. She broke the promise and didn't seem to care while I was struggling with my conscience even after just making out with Adam. On top of everything else, Jace was a pure-blood 𝐊𝐤𝐳, was to have known he had a mate. You've got NW Abu Easy now. 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸 Just forget Jace and move on. I've already moved on. It was just a fling. Good. She stared at me for a few moments before huffing. I'm going downstairs to check on Dad. I'll be there if you need anything else. I nodded as she left the room, groaning as the door closed. 𝐊𝐤𝐳 was known for pouting when she didn't get her way, and that was exactly what she was doing by leaving me there. I knew she would be mad at me once I told her how I felt about her, and Jace and I also knew she would be hurt by him not telling her about you. I didn't care though. She was reckless, and I couldn't say with honesty that she would have made a different decision had she known about you in the first place. With that thought playing through my mind, I went into the bathroom to shower. My eyes were immediately drawn to the vase of 7 red tulips that sat on the vanity. I sighed and walked over before grabbing them and putting them out in the bedroom on Adam's nightstand. It gave me chills to look at them, and I thought about throwing them over the balcony as Adam had done with the first bunch. But I decided against it, thinking that Adam might have wanted to see them when he returned. I got into the shower and washed my hair and body quickly, having just turned the water off. I dried myself off and wrapped my body in a towel. I stepped out from the glass, enclosed shower, and walked across the bathroom floor. I had just reached the door that led out into the bedroom when I froze, hearing someone shuffling around. My heart began to race 100 miles an hour as I listened closely. Suddenly, the sound of glass shattering echoed in the bedroom, and I yelped at the sudden noise. The bathroom door opened and I tripped backwards trying to get away from the intruder. I was more than pleasantly surprised to look up, see Adam standing in the doorway. Are you all right? Walking over to me, I nodded and stood up as he offered a hand on my back to steady me. I didn't mean to scare you. 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸 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 eyeing the shattered vase of tulips on the ground behind him. Come here. Adam pulled me into his arms and pressed his lips against mine. I immediately melted into the kiss and my fingers tangled themselves in his wavy dark hair. His hands reached up to cut my face as he pulled away and left a trail of kisses along my jaw and down my neck. I was worried, he admitted, mumbling against my skin. I'm all right, I assured him. I'm just glad you're home. The door wasn't even locked. Evelyn, pulling away to look into my eyes. Someone could have come in while you were showering. Someone did come in while I was showering. I'm just glad it was you, I said cheekily. He let out a breathy laugh and kissed my lips again. Adam's lips left mine, causing me to whimper at the lost contact. His nose was barely touching mine as I looked up and locked eyes with him. Did he touch you? I had nearly forgotten about Diedrick. I shook my head. No, but I slapped him and kneed him in the balls. Nearly laughing. I'm surprised he had balls to knee. I grinned, biting my lip as he said this. Adam pecked my lips again. That doesn't get him off the hook. He warned me. I'm still going to kill him. I looked into his eyes and saw the sincerity that flooded them. He wasn't lying. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝. I don't want to talk about Diedrick anymore. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝. My hand went behind his neck and pulled him down to kiss me again. This kiss deepened quickly as he reached down and picked me up. I felt the towel slip from under my arms and I quickly pulled it back together, feeling Adam smile at my bashfulness against my lips. I blushed. He sat me down on the bathroom countertop as I felt his tongue slip between my lips. I opened my mouth. His hands now in my hair. Adam's kiss was rougher this time, whether it was intentional or not. I knew this was because of his possessiveness. I could only imagine that knowing I had received uninvited advances from Diedrick angered him. Not only had Diedrick disrespected me in his brazen pursuit, he had disrespected Adam by refusing to acknowledge I was already mated. What kind of man thought he could take away the mate of an alpha superior? A stupid one. Apparently, Adam's lips left mine as they trailed down my neck, gingerly kissing the spot where his claim lay. I felt his teeth nip the sensitive skin and yelped. Sorry. Pulling away. Too rough. I raised my hand to rub the pain away in my neck. Adam ran his hand across his jaw in frustration. I shouldn't touch you when I'm angry. I gulped and slid down off the countertop. Forget about Diedrick. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝. We've got more important things to worry about. He nodded in agreement. I walked around him and stopped in the doorway, seeing the shattered glass from the vase spread out across the floor. Adam came up behind me. Like I said, I'm not the gentlest when I'm angry. Trying to figure out a way out of the bathroom while avoiding glass impaling the bottom of my feet. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝. Lifting me into his arms bridal style, Adam walked across the glass, causing it to crunch under his shoes as he did so. I'll get someone to clean that up later. Putting me down, I walked over the wardrobe and pulled out my clothes for the day. I'm going down to the office to try and sort this mess, he said as he passed me. Meet me for lunch. I nodded. I'll try to be in a better mood then, he assured me, walking towards the door. Adam, 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝. Getting his attention, he turned around to look at me and I smiled, knowing the mischievous look on my face was killing him. I don't mind it rough. Chapter 36 dresses and drama. The next 2 weeks went by quickly. Although Adam had promised me that he would focus on the more important issues, I had not seen Diedrick since the incident ended at Adam's office. I never asked Adam, but I was starting to think Diedrick might have been killed. The thought, while relieving to a degree, worried me. However, I didn't have time to worry about it too much. While Adam was hard at work trying to find the source of the red tulips, you and I had put our heads together to plan the wedding of the century. The flowers had been ordered, the cake was in the process of being made, and the ballroom had been completely refurbished to hold the multitudes of people that would be in attendance. 𝐿𝐢𝐬 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐬 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Was thrilled because it meant that 𝐿𝐤𝐳 and his family would be returning. 𝐊𝐢, on the other hand, seemed annoyed by all the guests. Where are we going to put them? She asked me. 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐬 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. This is your wedding. For Christ's sake, you should have the castle to yourself afterwards, not dealing with an overflow of people. We stood in the foyer, mapping out where all the flowers would be and where the guests would enter. Relax, I said, laughing. It's not that big of a deal. She crossed her arms and shook her head as I pointed to show the florist where we'd be putting the large crystal vases. I think you're giving too much grace, letting all these people stay here. I don't know why Adam doesn't just hold them all up in an inn in the village, she muttered. He is. 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐬 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Only the important people are staying in the castle. Speaking of the village, what time is my fitting? She looked down at her watch. In 30 minutes. I groaned. We need to find Vega and Mrs. Chandler so we can head out. Her mother and you were all going with me to Laura's shop for my final dress fitting. 𝐊𝐢 and Vega were also going to try on the bridesmaids' dresses I had ordered them. After making final arrangements with the florist, 𝐊𝐢 had someone fetch Mrs. Chandler and Vega so we could leave. The trip into town took only a few minutes. We parked in front of Laura's store as the guards that came with us went inside to make sure it was safe. Adam, much to my disdain, had ordered Anne around, the clock security detail to accompany me everywhere, while the two burly and intimidating men were never too close, nor did they ever come into the bedroom. The thought of being followed did not appeal to me. They always went into rooms before I did. They never let me go anywhere without them, and I found their ever-present stoic facial expressions to be rather unsettling. One of the men, whom I affectionately called Bear, due to my lack of knowledge of his actual name, came out of the shop and gave the all-clear to the driver, who unlocked the car doors and let the four of us out. The snow that was falling managed to get caught in my hair, despite the fact that it was a brief 10-step walk from the car into the building. As I walked inside the store, I brushed the snowflakes from my hair and looked around at all the wedding dresses. There were so many of them. One would have thought there weren't enough women in the town to buy them all. Laura had every size, every design, every fabric and cut that a girl could dream of. I walked over to look at one of the dresses as Vega, enthusiasm, 𝐊𝐢 and Mrs. Chandler all hurried inside as well. Bear and the other man, whom I called Moose, followed them into the store and locked the door behind them as they stood guard beside it. I rolled my eyes as I saw this and tried not to think about the fact that they were practically my babysitters where Adam worked. Laura came out of a back room and smiled when she saw us. Hello, ladies. Are you ready to try on dresses? Vega and you nodded enthusiastically while Mrs. Chandler sat down on the couch. I'm just here for moral support, she said to Laura. Laura smiled and went over to a tall, closed door closet. She reached into her pocket and produced a ring of keys to unlock the closet door before pulling out the two crimson red bridesmaid dresses. Whoa, Vega said. They were both chiffon dresses colored a deep red, along with a flowy, floor-length skirt. The dress had a strapless neckline with a beaded corset. I told you that you would like them. 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐬 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Elbowing Vega. I love it. Walking over to Laura and taking her dress from her hands. 𝐿𝐢 did the same. This looks amazing, 𝐿𝐢 said to Laura. Laura smiled. I'm glad you like them. I sat down next to Mrs. Chandler as the girls went into the dressing rooms to change. When they came out, Mrs. Chandler and I applauded. You two look beautiful. 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐬 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Smiling, They stood in front of the mirrors as Laura checked the measurements and made a few notes to hem Vega's skirt and tighten the corset on Lou's dress. "I can't wait to see yours," Liu said to me excitedly. I looked at Laura, who smiled. "It's ready if you are." I took a deep breath and stood up as she led me back over to the locked closet. She pulled out the huge white dress and helped me carry it into the dressing room so I could change. The skirt was long and heavy, making it difficult to carry alone. It easily weighed 50 or 60 pounds. Laura helped me change, tying the back together. "Are you ready to show them?" she asked me once she was finished. I nodded slowly, mesmerized by the intricate beading that my fingers gently danced over. She pulled back the curtain and dabbed the long train so I could walk easier. I bit my lip nervously as I walked around the corner into the room where you, Vega, and Mrs. Chandler sat. Immediately, Liu's jaw went slack and Vega gasped. "Oh my God, Mrs. Chandler whispered. I smiled anxiously as I turned to look at myself in the mirror. I watched as Laura went around and flared the back of the dress out behind me. The cathedral train nearly reached the back of the store. I got tears in my eyes as I looked at the wedding dress of my dreams. The off-the-shoulder neckline was beaded intricately with diamonds and plunged in the back to reveal a delicate design of crystals that continued down the skirt. The scalloped fabric in the back stretched on for what seemed like miles. I placed my hands on my waist and twirled slightly, nervous at how unexpectedly heavy the dress was. "It's all hand-sewn," Laura told me. I called in some help from a few friends who helped me do the beading once I had sewn together the skirt itself. "I hope you like it." I smiled and wiped away a tear that fell down my cheek. "I love it," I said earnestly. It was beautiful and all I ever wanted. Plus more. I looked in the mirror to see Mrs. Chandler wiping her eyes with her shirt sleeve. I frowned and turned around. "Please don't cry. To my authentic 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐬𝐩𝐭 𝐿𝐢𝐳𝐬𝐷𝐿𝐢𝐳𝐬𝐿𝐢𝐳𝐬𝐷𝐿𝐢𝐬𝐿𝐢𝐬𝐿𝐢𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 flowers. Baby girl. I gulped and looked at Vega. And to think, she said softly. I thought I was going to be prettier than the bride in my dress. You laughed. You sure about that now? 𝐊𝐲 shook her head, still admiring my dress. I don't want to take it off, I said, laughing. Looking back into the mirror, I saw Aura smile in the reflection. I'm happy you like it. I took a deep breath. One more day. You reminded me. I nodded and Vega sighed. My best friend is getting married in one day. I noticed the guards staring at me in the reflection of the mirror and I turned around. Don't you dare tell Adam you saw the dress, I said to them. They laughed. No. I wouldn't ruin for him for anything in this world. Adam's P.O.V. damn. I sucked in a sharp breath and slung the paper across the room. It joined a few dozen other books and files on the floor. I was getting nowhere with my investigation. No one knew anything about the tulips, where they came from, who put them there, or why they were there. The security cameras had been tampered with and there was no record of Diedrick being taken that day. A guard was dead. His mate and 4 children were now dependent on me, their alpha, to take care of them and find out who killed their father and mate. Not to mention, my soon-to-be wife was now being followed by security detail because I couldn't bear the thought of leaving her alone again. The thought of what could have happened while I was in Utah made me sick to my stomach. Evelyn wasn't strong. Not physically. She wouldn't have been able to defend herself if whoever had put those bloody flowers outside our bedroom door had decided to come inside the room. I closed my eyes tight, trying to keep my mind from wandering further. It wasn't just the flowers we had no clue about. It was also the investigation into the man who had ventured into the post office. Had I not been so rationed, he not have threatened Evelyn. I would have spared Barrett Schneider's life to find out exactly who that man had been. Now, with Ludwig Schneider and his son, Barrett, dead, I only had one other person who possibly knew anything about the unknown character, Diedrick. This was the only reason he was still alive. Although Evelyn wanted me to believe his advances towards her meant nothing and weren't important, I thought otherwise. What kind of self Righteous bastard thinks he could get away with sleeping with an alpha superior's mate. Evelyn wouldn't even let me touch her intimately. I couldn't imagine what it was like to be on the receiving end of her propriety as someone who was not her mate. The thought of another man putting his hands anywhere near her made blood boil to a point I didn't think I would be able to control myself. It made me sick. It made it easier, however, to know that I could trust her. In the same way I had easily fought off advances from the Chandler girl. I knew Evelyn wouldn't hesitate to put any man in his place if he dared to make any suggestive comments. I cringed at the thought of Vega. Normally, I didn't associate myself with women outside of a professional circle. Of course there were women in my life during my younger years, but not since I had taken over as Alpha Superior. But I was forced to associate with women like Vega now that I had Evelyn. As an Alpha, avoiding the lustful gazes of women was nearly impossible, but I felt much more uneasy when those gazes came from the best friend of my future wife. 𝐊𝐤 had attempted to seduce me twice. It angered me to a point of rage to know she had no decency to at least avoid a taken man, much less the mate of her best friend. However, I had no problem ignoring Vega. Her advances were meaningless and dull. She was an Evelyn, not even close. No one would ever compare to Evelyn's allure. Although I was enamused and untempted by Vega's charm, or lack thereof, it still weighed in my conscience. I knew not telling Evelyn was a mistake, but I also knew she had planned for Vega to be in our wedding as a bridesmaid. They had been best friends since middle school, and I couldn't ruin that relationship knowing Evelyn had already lost so much with the disappearance of her mother and bastard father. I had decided I would wait until after the wedding, when Vega no longer mattered, to tell Evelyn, but until then, it was a terrible secret that I held with immense guilt. I heard my office door open and close and then Jace's footfalls echo down the hallway. I looked up to see him enter the room, immediately note of the mess I had made. Not getting anywhere. I glared at him. The answer should have been obvious. Well, I have good news. I sat down in my chair and waited eagerly to hear it drive. The 𝐊𝐲 confirmed that the cause of death for the guard was an injection of lethal poison into the bloodstream, so that means no vampires. I sighed in relief. That's not all, he continued. He also says he found a way to help Warren Chandler, perhaps even restore his memories. I raised my eyebrow. How he didn't say. Jay shrugged. But if we can get Warren Chandler's memories restored, we might get a 𝐊𝐲𝐸 on any vampires in the area where we found him. I nodded. Good work. Are you nervous? He asked me. I looked at him in confusion. About what? Jace pursed his lips in annoyance. Your wedding tomorrow, he said incredulously. I don't think so. Well, I'm nervous for you, Jace said. I can't imagine being tied down to one woman for the rest of my life. My mind immediately went to you as he said this. You'll get there one day, I assured him. Jace was still young. He had a lot to learn about life and love before he would understand how foolish he had been to treat you the way he had. He shrugged in response. Maybe one day. Evelyn's 𝐿𝐲. It was the night before my wedding. After showering, I came out of the bathroom to find Vega entering the bedroom with armfuls of snacks and blankets. What on earth are you doing? I asked them. Vega dropped the bags of potato chips and her pillow and blanket onto the bed. Pre-wedding sleepover. Duh, she said. You rolled her eyes. We figured since Adam couldn't be in here that you would appreciate the company. Having forgotten about the traditional rule in which the groom was unable to see his bride the night before their wedding. Sounds fun, I commented. I walked over to the wardrobe and changed into my pajamas. Where's Adam anyways? Vega asked. Probably staying late in the office if I had to guess. I answered. I wasn't sure why she cared. Are you nervous? You asked me, taking a seat on the couch. I nodded, trying not to grin like an idiot. I'm so excited. To my agent 𝐋𝐮𝐳 𝐸. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing enthusiasm. I'm excited for you, he replied. Just think, Vega said. In 24 hours, You will no longer be a virgin. I rolled my eyes. We were talking about the wedding. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐸 𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐸 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐃𝐜鬠𝐬𝐭. She shrugged. Wait, Lee said. You mean you and Adam hadn't had sex yet? I shook my head, laughing at the confused look on her face. My mom ate Evie and I made this stupid promise before we were even old enough to know what it meant, and we had to promise to wait until we got married to have sex, Vega said, rolling her eyes. I'm guessing you didn't keep it. You asked her. Vega waved her hand dismissively. I had sex for the first time when I was 16. And she didn't tell her best friend. I added. Vega, I knew you planned on keeping the promise and I didn't want to deal with your judgment. I wouldn't have cared. Vega didn't respond. I'm still surprised you haven't slept with Adam yet. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐸 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐸. Lee said. Jason and I slept together a few hours after we met. Yeah, Vega added. And Adam's got the body of a god. I don't understand how you managed to keep that stupid promise. The body of a god. It irritated me. However truthful the statement was, that she said that about Adam, I was the only one allowed to think that. I heard the door open and looked up to see Adam walk in. Confusion swept across his features as he saw you and Vega. You're not allowed to be here. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐸 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐻𝐸. Laughing. Why, he asked slowly. You've never heard of the groom not being able to see his wife the night before their wedding? You asked. Adam looked at me incredulously. You've got to be kidding me. I swear you're making these rules up as you go, he said, groaning. I shook my head. He huffed and turned to leave. See you tomorrow, Mr. Devereaux, I said, smiling. He winked at me. Sleep tight, Mrs. Devereaux. I smiled and bit my lip as he left the room and closed the door behind him. Vega gagged. That was disgusting. That, 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐸 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐻𝐸 is what building a relationship on something other than sex looks like. She rolled her eyes. We stayed up for a few hours, talking a bit. Soon everyone became tired and we all went to sleep. I slept peacefully, knowing what the next day was bringing me. I'm getting married tomorrow.